ShawnMichaels and Triple H's 2-year storyline ended at Bad Blood 2004 in a Hell in a Cell match. We take a look at Bad Blood 2004 and we take you through all of the news and notes and get you all caught up on 2004 in pro wrestling. And the Podski starts now.
The Podski with John Baker. For over 1 year, the revolutionary force in audio entertainment.
Ooh, yeah!
Brother,
Let me talk to you! Freak out, freak out!
I just had an out-of-body experience!
Insane in the membrane!
Brother,
Yeah! And I'm here for only one reason, and that's to take it to the limit, yeah!
somebody stop the damn man!
I'm living on the edge.
Who is your daddy?
Hello and welcome to the Podski. I'm your host, Johnny Bakeshow, and ringside with me is Teddy Mongoose. We are back to the normal schedule with the invasion shows that we did with 100 and 101. So please check those out if you have not checked out those shows. They're great deep dives into the invasion. We couldn't cover everything from the invasion, but we did the best that we could in the time allotted. But before we get back into our normal schedule, we do have big news. Because of you subscribers and listeners, we finally hit the 400 subscribers mark, and you all have unlocked the Rick Rude bonus episode.
Give me a hell yeah!
We don't have a launch date set for it yet, but we've been working on it for the last couple weeks, anticipating this. So make sure you hit the bell notification so you know when it drops. And we're going to be recording this week, so we're trying to get it out to you as early as next week, but just stay tuned for that. So if you're new to the Podski, we thank you for joining us because we're back to 2004 with Bad Blood 2004. It's been a little bit since we traveled back here 20 years ago, but the last time we did was the Backlash 2004 show. So we have some catching up to do here. So we're going to give you some Mongoose reads, then we'll get to the show review. And Teddy, would you please get us up to speed with everything that is noteworthy from mid-April to June of 2004 at Bad Blood?
Good day, sir, and happy to do so. I do want to first shout out, thank you so much, subscribers. Being John's Ricky Ticky tag team partner here has been absolutely wonderful. And the only reason Rick Rude isn't ready now is because we want to make Rick Rude 400 worthy.
Yes.
And so we got a banger coming, we promise. So please stay tuned for that one. So I kick us off today here, John, with some Backlash business fallout. You said the last show that we covered was the greatest rematch of all time, right? But we're going to go through a string of Monday Night Raws where Dave Meltzer, who is as fickle as they come, and as tough a grader as there is in the early 2000s, literally lauds Raw after Raw after Raw for going full Sheamus and giving us
Banger! After banger! After banger! After banger!
the business fallout from Backlash. Again, touted as second greatest or the greatest rematch of all time, however you wanted to put it, from WrestleMania, where we had a superstar main event, triple threat match, ran back. So the first estimates of the Backlash buy rate, quote, have to be a disappointment for what promised to be a strong show and delivered on that promise, end quote. So the estimates 2 to 3 weeks out are 270,000 buys, or a 0.50 buy rate. This number actually does get revised up to 290,000 a week later from early May Observer, after the WWE released new data to calculate its buys. So Dave says there's an important lesson because the same main event at WrestleMania this year, at this point, listed as having 825,000 buys and delivered with a match of the year level performance with tremendous emotion, ended up having this much lower buy rate. So he says that they promoted this rematch of the greatest WrestleMania main event ever and to just under 1/3 of the number of buys. In other words, giving people an off-the-charts match, strong match quality on television, and promising a rematch just as good will not necessarily get you even 1/3 of the people back from the biggest show of the year.
That's a really interesting point, and I think that that adds to the allure of WrestleMania, where you are going to hook the most casual of the casual fans just because it's WrestleMania. And I remember back at this time 20 years ago, WrestleMania 20 was a big deal. Like, it was enormous. And it's crazy that literally 4 weeks later they did the rematch and it did barely, not even a third of that.
Well, and this is like, the glory days are over here. We'll go back to 99 and we'll talk about the crescendo up, right? They're up, 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 up. But the glory days are over here, and it is on display where, what worked forever is not working now. And we actually will get into that in a little bit here. So a couple of other news notes from Backlash. The number of buys was down 22.9% from the $350,000 the 203 Backlash show headlined by Bill Goldberg versus The Rock did. It was also down 32.5% from the $400,000 buys the show did 2 years earlier when it was headlined by Hulk Hogan defeating Triple H for the title in a singles match with Steve Austin versus The Undertaker.
I think that this is just a result of them coming out of the Attitude Era. I feel like exactly what we said. And I really want to go back to your point of saying, like, the highest of highs is 99 and we're on the crescendo. But I think that's a really nice thing that we do here on the show is that we're covering two timelines. They're 5 years apart. One is the crescendo and one is the decrescendo.
Yeah. We're on the downswing, and it's really interesting to see juggling that.
Especially the names. Because the names that you're seeing, like a Bill Goldberg Rock match in 99 would have been enormous business. And while it was still pretty decent business for 2003, I would say, but not nearly as good as it would have been 4 years earlier.
Well, in 99, Bill Goldberg versus The Rock is 1 million buys.
100%.
And in 2004, it's 350,000 buys. That's a good number, but it's not where it could have been.
Yeah.
It's not unusual for the number to grow for the first estimate, which, as I said, it did, even at times as much as 20%. And by today's standards, anything more than 300,000 buys for a singular brand show should probably be considered fine. And I do want to note that this number gets revised up to 290, and 290 is just under 300. And so at the end of the day, a win, right? Like nothing you hang your hat on, but not a loss at all.
Right on par.
But Dave says that maybe and this is Dave saying this, maybe I overestimated the power of the top two matches. So remember, John, not only did we have the run back of the triple threat, we had Randy Orton versus Mick Foley, man.
We did. In an absolute insane match. That match was so good. Now, you're not knowing going into it, but you would think, like that is a banner match.
And he then says, this number is even more of a negative because this lineup looked to be even stronger on paper than any lineup the company is going to put together on pay-per-view until the dual brand SummerSlam show on 8/15 in Toronto. Even the main event, tentatively scheduled to be Benoit versus Triple H for the title, has no more drawing power than this past month's match. So even SummerSlam will have to draw based on a dual brand in the SummerSlam name as opposed to match quality and match content.
So that's where we start to see the switch, where we're going to rely on brand name and brand recognition more than the actual matches.
That's you finished my sentence. When I started to say "and," that was where I was going to go to. This is where we truly see Big Four, Big Five, whatever you want to, however, I guess at this time, King of the Ring still technically is kind of there. But really Big Four is that we're going to go to the anchor shows to sell based on the show name as opposed to the people that are on the marquee. So I bring us into, and this might be the most interesting nugget trail that we lay here throughout the show today. So this is from the May 17th Observer, and the article was titled WWE Audience Demographic Shifts. So I start with, the average Raw viewer is a 33-year-old male.
Man, does this check out 20 years later?
Doesn't it?
I read that and I exploded when I read that.
Yep. Here's the crazy thing, is that during the peak of the Raw versus Nitro wars, the average Raw viewer was a 24-year-old male, and the average Nitro viewer was a 35-year-old male. So the audience change for SmackDown is similar, going from 25-year-old male as a typical viewer to a 32-year-old male. And the oldest skewing program is Heat, which had the typical viewer being a 40-year-old male. So before you say what are you talking about? Heat is your hardest of the hardcore. That's the answer.
Oh, I was thinking because of the network it was on, because it was on MTV.
Right.
So you had 40-year-olds diving into MTV just to watch an hour of Heat.
Just to watch an hour of Heat. 40-year-olds are home. 40-year-olds are invested in the product. 40-year-olds were in their mid-30s when it was at its peak, and they stuck around.
Yeah, you're right. That's all making sense.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so remember, though, because we started to talk about this during the Invasion shows, Heat is cratering with an audience. And so the people that are there are, dare I give another AEW allegory? I don't know if I piss off our audience or not whenever I go here, but this is the Rampage audience.
Yeah.
Heat is the Rampage audience.
That is true. And that's not because you hate AEW. You were waving the flag.
No, dude, I'm an AEW guy. And the only reason that I bring AEW into the fold here is that it's crazy how much history repeats itself and how much a mirror of the business we can find between two timelines over and over again. So even though we see discrepancies between 99 and 04, when we plugged into 01, there were so many things. And, we talked a little bit about like ROH and all sorts of other stuff going on now. But there's so many things in this business that mirror each other. And we talk about that from what Meltzer puts out there from, again, 01 to the mid 80s with your Invasion versus UWF and Jim Crockett deal. Yeah. And it's, you know what I'm saying? And so it's one of those deals where this isn't the NFL, right? This isn't the NBA.
Right.
Like things, and probably mostly because in this business, particularly because it's just as scripted as the NFL and the NBA are, but it's just up front. You can see the storylines replaying. Do you know what I mean? And bookers are smart in saying, well, this worked before, let's see if it works again. So to go back off of that little side trail here, the WWE targets this product to the 12 to 34 age group. What's surprising is that in 2001, it was the over 30 wrestling audience that died a brutal death, dropping almost 2/3 after the death of the older skewing WCW product. What this seems to say is that the WWE is not attracting a lot of new fans, because if you figure 2000 as the peak year, the 24-year-old then would be 28 years old now. So they've retained the older fan base while losing some of the younger base that they built up at that time. Currently, 24% of WWE's television audience is under the age of 17. That's not a bad number. And
That
I
was
don't know what it is today, but if it was 25% now, I think that they would be
elated.
doing a jig.
Yes.
Right.
What kind of frustrates me about the target audience is 12 to 34 is that the Ruthless Aggression era is built on the backbone of the bra and panty matches, the pillow matches, and Playboy. And looking back with 31-year-old eyes, it feels kind of dirty that they did that. Like that's the target age that they're shooting for, but that's how they presented it to us.
John, 38-year-old eyes that wants my kid to watch wrestling with me. I love turning on SmackDown. She loves Bianca Belair, dude. She loves Jade Cargill. She loves the women's matches. And not to say that she doesn't love the men's stuff. Like she pops for Cody Rhodes' entrance and things like that. But she sees these women as these warrior athletes. I can't show her wrestling. Like I can't watch the shows that we're watching now with her.
Right.
And that sucks because this is like the era, right? Quote unquote. Like
right.
this is the quote unquote glory days. This is all this stuff. And I won't let my kids see this, dude. I won't do it.
I know. Even if I have a show on like this and my wife walks in and she sees Stacy Keibler bending over in the ring, she's like, why are you watching that?
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
Yeah, because she's like, well, how is that appealing to you? I was like, well, it's not this. Like, it's what happens it's like the next matches. Like, you just caught me during this match right now. You walked in at a bad time. They
only walk in on the bad times, though.
Yes, you caught me on the Trish Stratus loading screen.
Yeah, dude. They will not they will not walk in the middle of an arm drag. They only walk in whenever somebody's, getting literally like oil poured all over them or whatever. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So to go back to our demographic breakdown here. So I said 24% of the WWE television audience is under 17. This is down 37% from the peak of the company's popularity 4 years ago. And here's the crazy thing is that, we talk about like kids and everything. This makes all the sense in the world to me personally, because I think of the Attitude Era as end of middle school, early high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm 13, 14 years old, and all me and my friends talked about was wrestling.
Yes.
And so, of course, that matters then, right? And we're under 17.
Right.
So another note about the drop in the under 17 population, that it's a lot bigger than the 35% drop would indicate. In actuality, because the total audience itself is down 33%, get ready for this, dude. The real drop among kids and teenagers is 60% from peak levels.
Man.
So the audience itself is down 30%. The demographic is down 35+%. So Dave's saying that the real drop in that under 17 market is 60% from its peak.
That all checks out, because why would kids and teenagers want to be watching what they were putting on at the time?
Well, the counter argument is if you're a 16-year-old boy,
right,
but you're going to lose the 13-year-old girl.
Yes.
You're also going to lose a lot of the 16-year-old boy whose parents are monitoring what they're watching.
Yes.
Whereas before, maybe they thought of wrestling as being Hulk Hogan and Macho Man. And they didn't realize, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, they didn't realize that it was there. Now it's so upfront.
And that makes a lot of sense, even in when we talk about 99 too, with Canadian School Board and all of that all checks out, and that's all a ripple effect to 2004.
Yeah. Those things take time, and especially because there's no Facebook.
Yes.
Like it's a total different story if we're in the social media age, which is also why WWE is so much more cautious now than it was before.
Right.
But then you're reading newspaper articles, you're reading magazines. That's where you're getting your news and your information as an adult, right?
Right.
And so that makes sense with that lag being there as to why it took time for those sort of things to be implemented.
Yeah, that all checks.
So Dave says the current WWE television audience consists of 3% under the age of 6, which actually I can't believe it's not a little bit higher, only because like when my kid was 2, I didn't care what was on TV.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I cared a lot when she was 5. 9% between 6 and 11, 12% between 12 and 17, 10% between 18 and 24, 19% between 25 and 34, 24% between 35 and 49, and 23% above the age of 50. So check this out, bro. Here's where Dave sticks the knife in. In other words, they are writing shows with the idea their target audience is actually only one half of their real audience. So what he's saying is they're writing shows to be geared toward 12 to 34. And in reality, half of their audience is older than that. So what are you doing?
Literally, it still plays even today sometimes. Like not current day, but even like 5 years ago for WWE.
Correct. And the reason they're in such a boom right now, and as a shoot parent of an elementary school child that I want to watch wrestling, I can literally check the box of this 2023, because even when Vince was still there, they were really starting to turn things around. But especially now, halfway through last year or whatever, through now, I can put it on and I know that they're not going to say bad words unless The Rock is on. I know that it's going to look like just competition. Like, do you know what I'm saying? I can confidently turn the television on and not need to be waiting to fast forward or turn it off or whatever.
Right.
And this is the one, in my opinion, one of the bad things with AEW is that even though they are edgier and they appeal to the younger audience at first, because you're not the cool thing anymore, quote unquote, you don't need to go PG, but you don't need to be dropping S-bombs. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you don't need to be doing those things, because those things are only going to make you less palatable to an audience that is able to watch shows with children now.
Yes, that is true.
And kids matter, dude.
They do.
Kids buy toys. Well, I say kids buy toys. We buy toys. But
I got a whole room of them downstairs.
Right. So he says, I don't have figures from a year ago to compare this with when the change was made to doing more long wrestling matches as opposed to the faster paced show. So any attempt to draw a correlation would be theoretical at best. But after running off the adult audience a few years ago, they are now keeping them. That literally feeds into what we're saying.
Yes.
Is that trash TV, you as an adult went back and watched these shows and said, this is a nightmare. These shows are way more palatable because you have longer wrestling matches. You have actual wrestling on wrestling shows. Yes. This makes sense. The audience they've been writing for is the audience that they've been running off to almost an incredible degree. Well, not incredible, because when you're talking about 12 to 24, that is the fad audience. And when the fad is over, they're going to be gone. And I wrote down 3 letters on my own notes, and they were AEW.
Yeah.
Because AEW's biggest audience right now is 35 to 49.
And that even checks even for my age demographic, because it happens to everybody. You always phase out at some point, and they were literally hitting the phase out.
Yep. And it's new things are cool things.
Yes.
And in order for things to stay, they need to be great.
Yes.
And when it's not great, then people move on. And the problem with AEW is that WWE got great.
Really great.
And at the very least, it was quote unquote as good.
Right.
You know, because match quality, you are not going to see Omega Ospreay Forbidden Door 2023 on a WWE show.
No.
But you are going to see very good SmackDowns.
Yes. Very good.
You are going to see noteworthy Raws. And that's all it takes, brother. You know? So from the May 3rd, 2004 Observer, we go from business stuff and audience stuff to an interesting story that I wanted to highlight here. So the WWE is getting very aggressive in trying to purchase pretty much all of the available semi-major pro league wrestling video footage on the market. Ooh. The idea that Vince wants everything that is there. The company already owns the AWA library, the WCW library, theoretically owns the Crockett and Old Georgia libraries through the WCW purchase, as well as the ECW library and the SMW library. I believe they've purchased the Stampede library or are on the verge of doing so. Again, this is in 2004.
Yes.
A lot of work is being done currently on this project, and the company this past week hired Peter Clifford as the new vice president of affiliate sales. Clifford's main responsibility will be to sell the idea to cable and satellite services. An interesting note on how much of a sweetheart deal the purchase of WCW's assets really was is that the company paid $2.5 million for the tape library, which includes all WCW plus a lot of old Georgia and Mid-Atlantic tapes. And last year, the WWE purchased, and this is 3 years later, the AWA tape library for $3 million, which was a company that folded 12 years earlier and hasn't been a national factor for 16 years.
You're telling me they paid more for the AWA library than they did for WCW as a whole?
Yes.
I guess the writing's on the wall in 2004 that media rights was... That is so crazy that they are so... I can't believe in 2004 that we're going back and reading about this, that they are so far ahead of their time. It's crazy. As bad of things that Vince has done in his career, in his lifetime, that this video library stuff is probably outside of the wrestling stuff that he did, is the most important and smart thing that he ever done business-wise.
Well, and here's the thing, John. The reason that the XFL was given a chance, the reason it was given a second chance, the reason, so many things have gone on is that he ain't a dummy, right? Like there's great ideas to be had here. And these are the same kind of risks that gave us WrestleMania in the first place.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
There's not much other to say than he is a brilliant wrestling mind. It is wild though. And if I could turn back time, I probably would have put some notes in here from the F4W newsletter from the invasion, because Brian Alvarez literally does an entire newsletter that hammers all the things that cost more money than WCW. I don't think that he would have thought that the AWA library would have been one of those in 2001, but it was. So Dave also says that they've attempted to purchase Florida's wrestling library, which is owned by Mike Graham, but Graham has told them he isn't interested in selling and is still trying to find a way to make money off of it. Graham has done some local syndication with the old tapes, and they've also aired some of the footage with big names on Wrestling Classics pay-per-view shows. WWE has opened up talks with Kevin Von Erich over the World Class Library, which also includes stacks of old Texas wrestling tapes. He's apparently not averse to selling, but it seems to be in no hurry to do so as he's got no financial pressures. They're also negotiating to purchase Mid-South's wrestling collection, which is owned by Bill Watts' ex-wife, who got the collection in their divorce. The collection actually goes back to the early days of the promotion, but the earliest tapes are in a different format and have never been made available. She has not been, up to this point, all that receptive to offers for the tapes. Obviously, the goal is to do a 24-hour wrestling channel, although that is still a long ways away. Vince wants to be the caretaker of history, which is ironic on so many levels since he spent 15 years being the one who ignored and tried to ignore history to the point of silliness, sometimes hurting the marketability of some of his wrestlers because of, quote, nothing exists except my own creations, end quote.
Wow. Again, the foresight that he had is incredible.
I wasn't ready to take the hammer here and just start swinging.
For real.
When we said we were doing Bad Blood. But holy cow, man, there's a lot of stuff that's right there.
There really is. There's so much stuff. It's crazy because like in 99, there's so much stuff that we can't put it on in a show, but there's just as much stuff in 2004 happening behind the scenes as well.
And the crazy thing about the 04 stuff is that the 04 stuff actually literally is relevant to today. We're talking about tape libraries. We're talking about audience shifts. Like, this is what's wild is that there will never be, and I can say that out loud, that there will never be the pro wrestling boom that existed in the late 90s because of the change in media. Like, there is no cable the way that there was cable. And the way that things are shared and the way that things are done, that isn't to say that wrestling wouldn't be as huge. And to be honest, it makes more money now than it did then.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of cultural relevance, there's too many other things out there to make wrestling that culturally relevant. That being said, we're seeing these shifts happening then, and they are literally directly relatable to what we're talking about today.
Yes, they are.
So my last thing that I have here before we get into the lead up to the show is Bill Goldberg did the Best Damn Sports Show on 4/22. He ripped on Vince, Triple H, and Stephanie. He was plugging Santa's sleigh. While he was cutting up on Vince, he was asked if no holds barred cage match with Vince. He said that if he ever wanted to work again, he couldn't do it because Vince would be dead. Well, that didn't last.
No, it did not. Until it was covered in blood money.
Right. He also said that the top guys in the business like him should have done more to stick up for the little guys and protected them from Vince. He said that Triple H's career lightning bolt went to the top because of his relationship with Stephanie. Again, sour grapes.
What you got there, sour grapes? You got a grip of sour grapes. Ooh!
So piggybacking off of the Invasion show last week, Diamond Dallas Page is confirmed for at least one comeback match on the 7/24 UPW show in San Bernardino, which will also include X-Pac plus Conan and Psychosis versus the Shocker and La Parka. Dusty Rhodes, who closed down his Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling group last year, has opened up a new company called Action Zone 1 with a debut show in 5/14. And I didn't know this was a thing. Miami, Oklahoma.
Where is that at? I'm on it.
Please. Headlined by himself versus Kamala.
Oh, it is.
If I could turn back time, like, let me see Dusty versus Kamala in 2004.
It is real. It is loading. They have a regional airport.
That's all I needed to hear. You got an airport, you exist. So as things stand right now, Lance Storm, 34 years old, has retired, with his final match being in his home city of Calgary on 4/19 versus Stevie Richards on Heat. So those were some big names, some things that we talked about with the Invasion show last week, and I sort of wanted to tie together some loose ends for where people were in 2004. We won't talk about this during this show, but I do want to note that during this time frame, there is also the big Japan, the Japanese promotion that has the Outsiders match versus the two Japanese wrestlers. on that same show, Mick Foley is on it. Like, so there was a cash grab Japanese federation that didn't end up going anywhere. But that Outsiders match is said to be one of the worst wrestling matches of all time. All right, John, I lead us into our road to Bad Blood with another strong Raw show on 4/26 was paced by a main event. John, you watched the shows. Take us through it.
Yes, I'm going to give the Cliff Notes version of the Raws leading up to Bad Blood. I just want to make a statement before we start is that when you watch these shows, there is a legitimate, when they say it's ruthless aggression era, like there is an attitude and there is a ruthlessness to these shows. Like you could feel it. That it's something that you don't feel in SmackDown. Like there's a different feel between the brands that I don't think you feel all the time now between the brands. So with that being said, the Cliff Notes version of the April 26th Raw is Kane has a crush on Lita, which that is an interesting thing. We'll see where that goes in the future.
Kane and me both in 2004.
Right. Yeah, and third. I'll third that. Triple H wants a match for the World Heavyweight title because he saved Michaels because Shawn tapped out at Backlash. Tajiri missed Triple H, and Triple H cuts a promo on a tree that he thought was Bischoff because he was blinded by the mist, and then a photo of Eric Bischoff on the wall. You need to go back and watch this segment on Raw. It is hilarious. They are getting the Rayman idea over with Eugene as he spouted off about the Quebec flag and Pat Patterson. They showed Victoria with Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi. They booed the hell out of this in Topeka.
Not Democrat country in Topeka.
I couldn't say that without laughing. Randy Orton and Shelton Benjamin did their angle for the pay-per-view with Benjamin making a save while Randy Orton was burying Harley Race. Chris Benoit and Edge defeat Ric Flair and Batista to keep their tag team titles in a 19-minute and 6-second match. And Dave gave that a 3 3/4 stars.
So this is the streak now of quote-unquote good Raws is where we are.
They're good.
So Dave then the next week leads into the WWE seemingly changing directions when it comes to several of their characters, and they're getting wilder with different characters. So you alluded to Eugene before with the Rain Man-ish deal where he can recall all the stuff about Pat Patterson, et cetera, when he sees the Quebec flag. So as it turns out, the Eugene character is going to be portrayed in the manner suggested here in the Wrestling Observer newsletter a few weeks ago. Dave, you want to talk about one of those like humble brags. He says, this has nothing to do with what was written here as it was suggested by many people beforehand. So this is Dave just brushing dirt off his shoulder. But the original gimmick of a modern-day Rain Man crossed with the mighty Igor, who was a 70s babyface character who played a simple immigrant who had freakish strength, looks to, from TV this week, to be a guy whose Rain Man strengths make him pick up technical submission wrestling at an incredible speed. The character looks to be that of a simple man who's actually a great wrestler after a great television vignette where William Regal was attempting to teach him and then stretch him, and then Eugene ended up stretching his teacher. Here's where things get wild, man. The other major change is that the Hirohito name for Kenzo Suzuki has been dropped. After the word got out in Japan after the first vignette aired, the fear among those who heard about it was that it would give the company a very negative image in the country. It appeared as if they were trying to relive World War II. Vince waving the flag, brother.
He did it on the Invasion show last week. He's back doing it again.
Yep. Hirohito was Japan's emperor during the war, and while Japan was a U.S. enemy at the time, Hirohito is beloved in Japanese society, Dave footnotes, and used the beloved Japanese cultural symbol as a hardcore American-hating heel. So he says the Hirohito character was scheduled for a huge push at first, apparently to be the top heel on the Raw side, aside from the Evolution group. Part of the reason for the hometown changes in the baby faces, and I did notice when watching Bad Blood that Jericho was noted to be from like Manhattan, New York or something.
Yeah.
So part of the reason for this change is that Hirohito would come in hating America, and most of their top baby faces were actually Canadian. So there was a problem there.
It is a problem. I understand.
Right, right. So they needed them to be built from America. There's actually like Benoit was built from Atlanta. Edge, I think, had his hometown changed.
Yeah.
So they were trying to Americanize these Canadian baby faces. Vignettes for Hirohito haven't aired in the past 2 weeks. The character is still in line for a major push, although not to the level first planned, which was right near the top of the cards immediately. The plan for Kenzo Suzuki, who ended up being called, was to be seconded by a 265-pound bodybuilder and his wife, a 29-year-old former Japanese news anchor and actor, which ends up happening later on. Some other character ideas and backgrounds. And here we go, John. The reprise of Papa Shango for Booker T, which was supposed to come out of his Undertaker program with a new take on wrestling.
Wait, hold my. Please tell me that Booker T was going to be the boogeyman.
Wow.
Oh my God.
What had happened was, so not only was he supposed to come out of this Undertaker program with some sort of like supernatural sort of gimmick to him, he was supposed to have snakes coming out of his mouth.
Oh my gosh, he was going to be the damn boogeyman.
The Bookie Man.
Oh my gosh. I so wish that happened. I want, if Booker T next week on NXT is sitting there with face paint on and he's sitting at the commentary table, I would explode.
Dude.
We all know I love
it's so nuts because Boogie has a look.
Yes.
Booker has a look.
Yeah.
They ain't that different. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
So you can absolutely see them saying, or probably Booker being like, bro, this don't work for me. And then being like, this is a good one. We're going to save this. And then all of a sudden they have a tough enough guy that they're like, hey, bro, you want to eat earthworms?
I love it. They went from snakes to earthworms.
Right. Because earthworms, you can control earthworms. Can't control snakes.
That is true. That is true.
You know, we found this out with the macho stuff. They should have learned their lesson years ago with Jake. So there's also Mordecai, who's the early Undertaker reboot that's being groomed for the Undertaker.
Oh my gosh.
And here's what's crazy, man. I didn't realize this. Tyson Tomko is an early Diesel reboot.
I have a quote for Tyson Tomko that we get when we get to Bad Blood, but okay, I see it now. I see it.
Yeah. Diesel was the reason Diesel got his name, according to Bruce Pritchard, was that Shane McMahon was a cool kid at that time, and Diesel was the word that you use for these big jack guys.
Yeah.
And so that Diesel worked it. So here's your Diesel. And Rene Dupree is a Rick Martel reboot.
I think that one makes the most sense out of all of it here.
Yeah, I agree. So all of this is happening at the same time. And this is what's wild, man, that the company is putting belts on Eddie and Benoit with the emphasis on great wrestlers with real names battling it out for the title. And I have hashtag that's so Vince. Because, hey, we have real sport, we have long matches, we have real names, we have all this stuff. Here, let's get Voodoo Worm Eater. Let's get another dead man. This one's in white instead of black. Let's, you know what I'm saying? Like, you might as well will out Duke the Dumpster Drosy here.
They should have missed opportunities.
Right. Dave says that, and between putting the Cruiserweight title on Jacqueline, much of the new ideas are eerily reminiscent of the Vince Russo WCW. I also want to say, before we move on back to the shows, that currently the 6/13 Raw Bad Blood pay-per-view from Columbus, Ohio will be headlined by Triple H versus Michaels in a Hell in a Cell match, which explains the Raw finish. We'll get to that. No word on the rest of the card. Since Orton has programs set up with Edge and Benjamin, I don't see it as Benoit versus Orton. Both Jericho and Christian in promos in recent weeks have talked about a title match, so Benoit may be in that position. They swerve. And it's notable that clearly, even though Benoit is the champion, it'll be Triple H's match that'll get the major push, which obviously not only does Hell in a Cell main event, Hell in a Cell goes on for 7.5 hours. Okay. So it doesn't main event in main events. It's also interesting that the Hot Raw brand on the 510 San Jose show is putting on a free TV show with a lineup that's stronger than the Cold SmackDown brand's pay-per-view 6 days later. The 5-3 Raw did more to push the following week's show than they've done for anything in a long time, with Orton versus Edge for the IC title, Christian versus Jericho in a cage match, Triple H versus Benjamin, Batista versus Tajiri, and Eugene's debut versus Rob Conway all pushed throughout the show. And then leading into that, Dave says, the Raw streak continued with a tremendous Michaels-Benoit main event on 5-3. The show was built around the match with a video package and even an appearance by Vince McMahon for no other reason than to get over the importance of the bout. John, your review.
Yes. So Shelton Benjamin, Edge, and Tajiri beat Evolution, which is a Triple H, Randy Orton, and Batista in 17 minutes, 33 seconds to start the show after Tajiri misted Batista. Orton tended to Batista, but got speared by Edge for the pin. The highlight reel, which is a great talk segment that they have at this time with Chris Jericho. I love the highlight reel so much. Has Jericho throwing his hat into the world title picture with Matt Hardy popping the question to Lita, but Lita doesn't come out because she's been abducted by Kane.
Viable reason.
Gail Kim. Interesting name we haven't really mentioned a lot here on the show. Gail Kim beats Victoria in a non-title match. Eugene's training session with Regal and Dr. Tom Pritchard cheering on as Eugene is working Regal. That's where we said that he ended up stretching the teacher. Benoit pins Michaels in 28 minutes and 28 seconds to retain the World Heavyweight Championship. Triple H hits the pedigree after a ref bump where Shawn actually super kicked Benoit. Michaels doesn't kick out even after a long delay, and Dave gave that 4.25 stars.
It should be noted there that the cool thing with that finish is that how many times do you see the finish, the phantom pin, the heel comes in, hits the move, and then you're about to get, the 1, 2, the kick out.
Yeah.
And they didn't kick out there. That's pretty clever, man. It really is.
It really is. Okay, so the May 10th Raw, Shawn attacks Hunter in his match against Shelton Benjamin for costing him the world title. It got so out of hand that Bischoff suspended ShawnMichaels.
So I want to note here that for this May 10th show, the one that was, Dave said that they were really, really kind of gearing up for, the ratings for the show this past week were nothing short of a disaster. With as much hype and a loaded lineup expected to deliver an above average rating, Raw on 510 drew a 3.42 rating.
Ooh.
3.27 for the first hour, 3.55 for the second hour. At that time, they didn't have complete details on the ratings, but they did have estimates on the segments, which included the show opening with a 2.88 opening segment for Triple H versus Shelton Benjamin.
Man, that's bad.
So a sub-3 rating. The Jericho versus Christian cage match gained an estimated 639,000 viewers, which is great, but the final and peak rating of the show was 3.90, which is well below what main events of the show have been doing, although the lower overall viewing played a major part into that. For comparison, 1 week earlier, Raw did a 3.91 with a 4.07 second hour, the Michaels versus Benoit match.
That's bad ratings for that.
Yeah. Was right. You nailed it there. So Dave said, although the rating was a disappointment and it hasn't helped the house shows, the excellent main event streak on Raw remained unbroken with the cage match on 510 in San Jose.
As Dave alluded to, Jericho beats Christian in a steel cage match in 11 minutes and 40 seconds. Dave gave it 4 stars.
4-star match to you?
Yes, 4 stars. It's crazy they had a 4-star match on a Raw.
Yeah. Which we'll get to because they're coming.
Yes.
They're dealing them out here. So May 17th, John, what you got?
They have a battle royal to determine the number 1 contender for Chris Benoit in the World Heavyweight Championship at Bad Blood. A suspended Shawn Michaels runs in and eliminates Triple H as he was going to defeat Kane, but he is eliminated by Shawn, and Kane becomes your number 1 contender.
Okay, so Dave at this time says, we don't have complete details on the 517 Raw, but the combination of Rock's unannounced return, and to think of how much it probably would have done better had it been advertised, and the Battle Royal did a 4.0 rating. We don't have details, but Rock appearing with Eugene coming in at 10:15 p.m. when the rating usually nosedives, did something along the lines of a huge 4.6 quarter. The Battle Royal overrun was 4.9, which would be one of the highest rated matches of the year. So Dave segues this with the Raw streak continued on 517 with another great show and an excellent long match. John, go ahead.
Chris Benoit and Edge retain their tag titles over Randy Orton and Batista in 17 minutes and 31 seconds. Dave gave this a 4-star match. It is a really good Raw tag team match you'll see on a television. Eugene was embarrassed by Coach, but Eugene's new friend, The Rock, came out of literally nowhere. Unexpected, hadn't seen him since WrestleMania, boom, on a Raw. This started the popcorn fart thing for Coach, which explains all of those signs of Bad Blood, and we'll get to that in a second.
I didn't know why those were a thing.
I have no idea. If you don't watch the Raws, you have no context for why they're happening.
Yes, yeah. Like there was no background. They even showed the Eugene thing at Bad Blood.
Yeah,
you could have had Rock saying popcorn fart or whatever, because if you didn't know, like you're just like, why are these people all writing popcorn fart on paper?
Yeah, yes, they could have done a way better job. My word. But Kane won the Battle Royal in 22 minutes and 2 seconds.
Okay. Kicking it back to the May 24th Raw. John, go ahead.
Show starts with Triple H begging Eric Bischoff to reinstate Shawn, and Evolution waits in the parking lot for HBK to arrive. Hunter is going to beat HBK half to death and drag what's left of him out to the ring and finish him off live in front of the world. I don't know why Triple H thought that that's a good way to say it, but that's how he said it on the show. So Triple H is pissed at Evolution because they didn't help him last week when HBK interfered in the match. And this is where I absolutely popped to the moon, because Orton was like, well, I wasn't on top of my game because I was partying the night before. And I exploded. Hunter sends Evolution out for Flair's match, but he calls Batista back in case HBK shows up, which was really funny because it was like, okay, you guys all go out to the ring, but hey, Batista, hurry up and come back with me just in case he shows up.
The writing around Triple H is really smart, man.
It is.
And it makes sense because they're very invested in the writing around Triple H. But yeah, these little nuances, like, I feel bad for everybody else that wasn't in the storyline.
Vince announces the Diva search, so we'll see that later in the year here as well. Hunter and Batista are waiting outside in the parking lot when a car pulls up. They're like, oh, hey, that's him. They hurry up and run and attack him, but it's actually Stevie Richards.
Who could blame them, because both of them are DDPY disciples.
Yeah. Michaels attacks Hunter outside the building, and it's an all-out brawl, but they're separated by referees. Michaels is with Bischoff, and he's asking if he has his match on his terms, and Hunter attacks Shawn in Bischoff's office. Of all the people, Michael P.S. Hayes and Sergeant Slaughter pull Hunter away.
Look, man, if you're going to have enforcers, if you're going to have heat, there you go.
They're perfect. Evolution is planning to go get Shawn, but Shawn attacks the planning party in the locker room, but it's broken up by all the nearby wrestlers. Hunter then hits the ring, calls out Michaels. Michaels hits the ring. They start the fight. Members of Evolution hit the ring, but Michaels is able to hold them off, but they keep fighting. Bischoff comes down with the rest of the locker room to try to break up this fight. He announces that Bad Blood, it's going to be Hell in a Cell.
So Dave says that we didn't get much on the 524 rating other than it did a 3.5 overall rating on hours of 3.3 and 3.7. Well down from the previous week. Not a good sign after the string of good shows, which, dude, this must suck. Like when you're churning out shows that have great matches.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine how this feels, especially being not only, I was going to say, especially being the talent, but even if you're the people in creative and you're saying, look, man, we are giving you great matches. Why aren't you watching? It's going to be a really frustrating deal.
Yeah, it is.
But
and they're giving you
changing landscape, man.
Yeah, and they're giving you great segments like this Triple H and Shawn, this entire Raw show from May 24th, that it being centered around them. It's all really good. If you just want to sit down and watch a random Raw, this is a good one. Like they carried the storyline throughout the entire show. It was from the first scene to the last scene, and it was all really good.
Yep. It does say the first hour seems to indicate that it started low, and that's before that anyone would have known that it wasn't going to be on the caliber with the match quality. And Dave did say at the start of this one that the 524 Raw saw the streak of great main event matches coming to a close. So this is where they stopped with not stopped with but 4-star match, 3 3/4 stars, etc. The main event. And here we went with the segment being the main event deal instead. So Raw on 531, Dave said this is the second week, not up to the level of recent months in terms of match quality. So John, take us through this one.
The show was in Montreal, and the crowd went nuts when La Resistance beat Benoit and Edge for the tag titles. The finish had Edge spearing Benoit accidentally. This ends up being a thing that happens continuously with Edge and Benoit as tag team partners.
Dave says later on, and I don't think that I noted this in here, that plans change because quote unquote plans change, right?
Yeah.
But that was the idea, was that they were planting seeds for an Edge versus Benoit program. And then they veered off of it. But people get so mad at plans change. Look, man, if that's your finish here, plans had to change.
Yeah, for real. They did. Because it's not that great. Not at this point for Edge.
Yeah, and why else do this finish, right?
Bischoff told Coach to apologize to Eugene, and he does. They shake hands. Kane then comes out, pretends to go after Coach. Kane and Eugene hug, and Coach and Kane turn on Eugene. That son of a...
I saw this in the pregame thing for the Eugene and Coach match. It is really funny seeing Kane just kayfabe being a baby face. Yeah, everything's all good. Now you die. Like
Shelton Benjamin beats Randy Orton in a non-title match in 13 minutes with a power slam. If Benjamin won, he got his title shot at Bad Blood. So now we have our IC title match set for Bad Blood. They run a promo for Hell in a Cell, and it's a match that Triple H had never lost up until this point. That is something that is pounded into your head, that Triple H has never lost a Hell in a Cell up to this point. Dave
says here, this is the shortest promo Triple H has ever done since becoming a family member.
Trish Stratus comes out to run the highlight reel. She starts burying the crowd, and Jericho runs out, but he gets beaten down by Tyson Tomko. Eugene beats Kane in the main event via disqualification in about 7 minutes. What an ending for Raw.
Dave says the Raw on 531 drew a scary 3.22 rating. So we are cratering, man.
Yes.
3.03 first hour, 3.39 second hour, 4 million total viewers. It would be the lowest rated live Raw since November 11th, 2022, which did a 3.15 rating for the show, headlined by TripleH versus Booker T, and is the second lowest since early 1998. So the second lowest rated Raw since early 98, in the peak of the literal wars where it was back and forth, back and forth. Go home Raw, take us to it.
We have Lita pinning Gail Kim. Eric Bischoff sets up Eugene versus the coach and notes that the coach has never lost a match on pay-per-view. And I know, right? Johnny Nitro started laughing, and that sets up Eugene versus Nitro later in the show. Batista pins Shelton Benjamin after an Orton distraction.
So Dave said the only way for this to make sense is if Benjamin is getting the title, which I expect to happen.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
La Resistance beat Benoit in a handicap match after Edge ran in for the DQ, which then turned into Edge and Benoit versus La Resistance and Kane. Kane pins Benoit clean with a choke slam. Eugene pinned Johnny Nitro. And in our main event, Michaels beat Orton via DQ in the non-title match. Batista interfered for the disqualification, and Michaels super kicked Batista, laid out Orton as well. He goes into the crowd. He lays out Flair. The show ends with ShawnMichaels and Triple H brawling in the skybox, which this is one of the greatest endings to a Raw you will probably ever see.
Hot angle to finish the show, to go into a big-time blood feud, end of a 2-year storyline. A couple of news notes here. Dave says the term on Shawn Michaels' contract expired on 6/6. However, there was an option for the same pay rate, believed to be the $750,000 per year range, and the WWE told Michaels that they were renewing him for 1 year, so they're picking up that option. Mm-hmm. Dave notes for the pay-per-view that it'll be a hard night for Benoit, but on paper, it's a good show. From a marquee standpoint, its success or failure depends on how many people want to see the Hell in a Cell match. If they consider the feud overdone, it won't work. If they consider it the climax of a long, great feud, then it will work. This is so Dave. My gut as a fan is leaning toward the former, even though I expect a great match.
And that concludes the Road to Bad Blood. So, Teddy, it's time for the main event. The Podski Powers collide as our individual childhood favorite wrestlers are about to clash in the ultimate blow-off to their nearly 2-year-long feud in a Hell in a Cell match. I'm going to kick it over to you. Will you please lay out the silverware and the plates and set the table for Bad Blood 04?
All right, man. So Bad Blood 2004 came to us live from the Nationwide Arena in Columbus, Ohio. 2% thumbs down, 20.5% thumbs in the middle. Best match with 188 votes was Shawn Michaels versus Triple H. Worst match with 106 votes was Victoria versus Trish Stratus versus Lita versus Gail Kim. I should also note that the Hell in a Cell match did get 22 votes for the worst match. Dave says this show was a mixed bag, and the reaction depended largely on where you viewed the show. The negative was that it was one of the worst crowds for a pay-per-view in recent memory. The show drew a little shy of 9,000 fans, with about 7,500 paying $494,000. Also, all of the upper deck was closed off, and a lot of the building downstairs on the camera side had tarp over it. As bad as things have been, it's been years since I've heard of a pay-per-view doing half of a house. The positive is, based on the response here, the pay-per-view probably did considerably better than the near record lows of Judgment Day. We'll get to that later this month, more along the lines of Backlash. That would be the drawing power of the sell, and if the number comes close to Backlash, it would be considered a success.
All right, so to start the Bad Blood review, kicks us off with your World Heavyweight Champion Chris Benoit, along with his tag team partner Edge versus La Resistance. I don't have much to say about this match, but when Kane interfered and Kane got that enormous blow of pyro, but no music when he interfered, that was incredible. The visual of Benoit holding La Resistance in that crossface and that camera shooting up at the stage and just the pyro blowing off, that was an incredible visual. I hate to say it, but Kevin Dunn, you did a good job on that one.
Yeah, I said I love the blood drops on the set here.
Yeah, it's so good.
And not only on the set, but whenever they had everybody's name come up, there was blood dripping off.
They had the dripping sound effects too. It was really,
really, really cool thing there. Oh, Canada started the show, and I thought that was so Nikolai Volkov, and I really, really love that too. You know, it takes me back to those Saturday Night's Main Event days. So that was awesome. I thought that this was a fine match. I get the finish, but that doesn't mean that I didn't think that the finish was stupid. Just because, of course, Chris Benoit is doing double duty, and of course, the heel that he's facing off with later is going to come out and beat him up and throw him around and ragdoll him. And to me, and when I say stupid, trope, hashtag trope, right? That's all it was.
Yep.
So fine. Dave gave it 2 stars, but yeah, I thought that we had a good match going. And when that happened, I was like, of course that happened.
Of course. Yes. Coach is backstage and he's warming up for his match against Eugene. Bischoff has gotten rid of William Regal at ringside tonight, so it's all about the coach. Coach leaves, but Eugene was standing there listening to the whole exchange and he's very upset, and Bischoff has to console him and try to make him feel better for what Bischoff was saying.
So I have here that Coach is a bigger nerd in Michigan gear than even Jim Harbaugh was. You know, Coach doesn't even have on $7 khakis. Bischoff doesn't know where the quad is located, and that popped me because he says, do you know how TripleH was in that match and he hurt that muscle in the back of his leg? And I'm like, Eric, come on, man.
Yes.
It's whatever. So I laughed.
Our next match is Chris Jericho versus Tyson Tomko. And I wrote, if Godsmack was a person, it would be Tyson Tomko. There's just so much tribal.
I wrote, bigger regret, Tyson Tomko for these tattoos or the dude in the hard cam for wearing a Darko Milicic jersey?
Equal amounts of regret, I assume. But Tyson Tomko, he showed some really impressive power moves, I thought, in this match. It could also be a result of how good Chris Jericho is at selling. Interesting here that Jericho won another match with the running enziguri, because we mentioned that on the Backlash show where he wins by the enziguri out of nowhere, but I guess that he was really trying to get over another move, and it just shows that Jericho was willing to maneuver and try different things and evolve his character, just like he did with the spinning back elbow.
Which, it makes sense because the reason he didn't do the lion tamer is because you couldn't lion tamer everybody. So that's why it turned into a Boston Crab.
Mm-hmm.
And look, man, you're trying to do moves that you could do on everyone. It's just the Judas effect is way cooler than the spinning enziguri. That's all.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So Dave gave this one 1.5 stars.
Randy Orton versus Shelton Benjamin for the Intercontinental Championship. We mentioned this on the Backlash show that they're really trying to elevate Benjamin here. And in a few short months after the draft, Benjamin got himself another Intercontinental Championship opportunity here against the biggest rising star in the company with Randy Orton. Orton mentions that tomorrow marks 6 months as Intercontinental Champ, and he's still the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion of the last 7 years. And it felt like they're really trying to build the Intercontinental Championship back up here from where they were in the Attitude Era. And so they do some interesting entrances where Orton is interrupted by the crowd and he takes the mic and goes out to the crowd that way. So he's really getting a lot of heat as a heel, but then they give Shelton Benjamin the entrance. Shelton is still not great on the mic, but he does look impressive in the ring at times. Orton retains in a match that was slow, but it picked up at the finish.
So the note that I have here is that I saw a Juggalo jersey in the front row. So an ICP psychopathic jersey. And because this show happened in Columbus, I do need to take you guys back into the time machine here. So I went to the Gathering of Juggalos in 2004, which was actually in Ohio.
Yeah.
And there was a fella after we were leaving. Okay, so there was 3 days of face paint Fago debauchery going on, right? Nobody could even shower because there was 7 showers that were there. Like it was just literally like you got clean by somebody spraying Diet Fago onto you after the nerd beside you sprayed Fago Red Pop onto you, which made all your clothes stink. Like there's nothing worse than the sugar content in true Fago Red Pop or whatever. So I say all this because we're leaving and there is a dude sitting in the parking lot area-ish holding a sign that said, "Juggalos, I need a ride home. I spent all my money on merch. Please help."
Oh my word. I hope
we drove right past him. That's a you problem, pal, because we brought money for merch and for gas.
I hope it was that guy.
And so I was just hoping that it was that guy. Yeah, there was also a Miho sign in the hard cam side. So if you know, you know. I thought that one tugged my heartstrings a little bit there. So Dave gave this one 3.25 stars. I thought it was fine. I just didn't know how the Flair thing wasn't a DQ. I mean, Flair enters the ring, gets thrown into a figure 4. Like all this is happening. Why don't we have a DQ? But whatever. I mean, it was fine. And again, Dave gave it 3.25. So there you go.
Our next match is for the women's championship. It is Trish, Lita, Gail Kim versus Victoria, who is your women's champion.
Before it starts, though, I did write Tonsilaki. Like, I don't remember this. Like, all of a sudden, Matt Hardy and Lita just licking each other's tongues.
Yes.
Like, I didn't know that we were just doing this on TV at this point in time. Like, I watched it. It didn't stick with me at all.
Yeah, they were sneaking it in early, and then they got the live sex show a year and a half later.
Well, that was with Edge.
Yeah. Trish and Tyson Tomko aren't a terrible pairing here.
She's a great heel here.
Yeah.
I forgot about this heel run. She's great. Her visual, her facials, like she's really good, man. She's really good.
It just feels that Tomko is a little boring, but they do some really good stuff. So Trish is your obvious star in this match, and she becomes your women's world champion on a roll-up. Lita hit the DDT on Gail Kim, and she was presumed to win, but then she was immediately rolled up by Trish. And this is every single multi-man finish that you see in WWE for all of time.
And you know what? It's a good finish. They just did it 7,000 times after this. They probably even did it before, but man, did they just murder this with person hits their finisher, heel runs in and steals the pin.
Yep.
So I don't really have much to add except for, dude, Lita's song
so good.
Is an all-timer. It
is
an all-timer. It hits, and the crowd goes insane. And Lita isn't very quote unquote good, but she's a star.
She really
She is, dude. And she's treated like one, and the crowd's going nuts for her. And that song is so good. It's still so good now. I also, though, I have noted that I do not remember even a half second of the non-tattoo, instead babyface, milkshake-ish dancing babyface Victoria.
I don't
Like, that was weird.
It was weird. Whenever she came out and the music was different, I was like, wait, when did they repackage Victoria? I had no idea this happened.
And then I thought that they did the deal where they dubbed stuff over.
That's what I thought
And
too.
then Jerry Lawler goes, that song sounded like that milkshake song.
Yeah.
And I thought, mother bleeper, that was her shoot song at this time.
It was weird. Not
And like she would like stop and do like a rump shake before she did like a moonsault or whatever. Like, yeah, this was different.
It was different.
I guess that's why they had her out there babyface in the Democratic Party.
There is an excellent package for Eugene, and it was really good that Mongoose you mentioned earlier. And that leads to our next match, which is Eugene versus Coach. I have written, what a fit by Coach, which we already mentioned with the Michigan outfit. Back-to-back fits for Coach, but man, does he need help hitting the ropes.
Dave writes, Coach has a great look, but he twice nearly fell through the ropes when bouncing off.
Poor timing is what that was. We mentioned on the Backlash show too that Coach was self-taught by the boys before and after the show, so we're gonna give him a pass on hitting the ropes. But
I don't want to say I hate. I'm happy I learned these things. I hate knowing them later.
Yes.
Because I hold so many things about so many things against so many guys for all these years. And like, I wish I knew this man.
Right.
This would babyface Coach to me.
Right. It would have worked. But this match was perfectly fine, a 10-minute comedy spot match. And my God, when Coach kept hitting the ropes while Eugene was messing with that stuffed animal at ringside.
That was excellent, dude. That was absolutely excellent.
I levitated off my couch. I was so happy. I will say that calling the girl down in the bikini to bribe your opponent with cookies is a bold strategy, but that's probably why we never saw it before or after, because it didn't work. And Garrison Cade still sucks. Edge,
Yep.
Eugene wins with the people's elbow, and it was glorious.
I literally wrote in my iPhone notes, this is the best segment I've ever seen Coach in.
It was good.
Here's why it was awesome, man. The match wasn't any good, and it didn't have to be.
Right.
Coach was perfect here because when they tried to portray Coach as cool heel, it was dead.
Right.
Because Coach has a good look, but he's not cool.
Right.
When Coach is a cool nerd, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Like Coach was 1993 heel here.
Mm-hmm.
Cool dude, here I come. Oh, I'm gonna get embarrassed.
Right.
And this was so old school that I thought this was This was an ace. Dave gave it a half star, but I thought this was an ace. I love this.
I loved it too. But we're here at the semi-main event, which is Benoit versus Kane for the World Heavyweight Championship. Any video package is perfect with the great song selection, and my God, this was perfect. I understand the matchup here is big versus little, but the problem with this match is that it didn't feel like a World Heavyweight Championship match. The Hell in a Cell felt more important than this match, and this felt like a mid-card match, which sucks because they were like legitimately trying here. After 6 German suplexes, Benoit went to the top rope for the diving headbutt. Both men were out exhausted. They rose to their feet, and Kane gave Benoit a chokeslam for a near fall. Kane went to the top rope for a high-risk maneuver, but Benoit countered the move with a crossface. Kane somehow fought out of it. Benoit muscled his way around Kane. He got him to stumble into a roll-up. Benoit retains as your champion.
This to me, and again, dude, all we can do is read, right? We don't know.
Right.
But This reminds me of the '04 Royal Rumble show in the archives, Forgotten Royal Rumble. Check it out if you haven't. Where we note that Dave says that Shawn and Triple H were basically like, look at us, have us a match.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So to me, this is those two masturbatory in the back saying, you guys have your little 10-minute match. We'll show you how to main event, because it probably cut spots out because things were, we were going to do this later. Yep. And blah, blah, blah. So to me, when you say this didn't have the main event feel, that's not like it wasn't by design.
Right.
This is also my favorite wrestler of all time, your favorite wrestler of all time, wrestling each other.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they weren't jerk-offs, right?
Yep.
And so to me, this was the epitome of a 3-star match. Like, I saw this and I was like, this is good and nothing's great. I loved the last couple of minutes. I really did. But yeah, this to me was semi-main on purpose. Yes. This felt semi-main.
It did.
And it sucks because it was for your world championship.
Right.
Dave gave it 3.5 stars though. So Dave didn't poop on it.
Todd Grisham interviews Benoit backstage, and I hate these right after the match interviews. He's just panting because he just did this match, and it just feels rushed, and I don't like it.
I have Todd Grisham. Woof. I've had enough of you, Todd Grisham, and I've only seen you for a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
He'll stick around.
Unfortunately. But here we go. We're at the main event. The cell lowers. We get the main event video package. Mind you, there's literally an hour left of the show. So we're in for a long one. I remember this so much, dude. Like, listeners, we all know that I'm the big Triple H mark. Mongoose is the big Shawn mark. And I'm especially heavy here in 2004. And Triple H in the cell was an automatic dub. I didn't notice it then, but obviously they kept mentioning it. So obvious that H was gonna. It made it seem like that as many times as they mentioned that Triple H has never lost, that he was gonna lose. But we finally got to this match, and it was an epic. They beat each other into a pulp. Tons of near falls at the end. Neither man willing to give up. Neither man willing to give an inch. Hunter eventually hits the third pedigree. Reached over and laid out Shawn for the win. Hunter stays undefeated in the Hell in a Cell match, but Evolution had to carry Hunter to the back. He couldn't do it on his own.
Yeah, so I break kayfabe here a little bit. I texted John whenever I saw this one, so I knew there was a lot of show left. So I set the treadmill to an hour, and I was like, you know what? Daddy's he's gonna walk here until the show's over. Thank God I paced myself, okay? Because from the video package to the pin, 56 minutes, 4.31 miles, 842 calories. Bruh, if I was on 5.0 from the start, I'd have never made it, ever. So the fact that I was playing 5-minute intervals starting on 4 helped a lot, because daddy would have been licking the rubber here if that was the case. So I seriously, dude, I thought this was excellent and way too long.
Yes. Yeah. They need
I wrote down, if this was 35 minutes and not 47 plus, this is a 5-star match. And the reason why is the story was, we know each other so well. They started with a fight, which I love when things start as a fight, especially when they're blood feuds. They didn't care about anything other than punching each other in the face and chopping each other and hurting each other man to man. And then we get the gimmicks. And after the stuff outside and the chairs and the chair shots and all this stuff, dude, I did. And I especially appreciated Jim Ross trying to get over. ShawnMichaels has punched this man in the face so many times, I think his knuckles are broken. Yes. I think his hand's broken. Even if it wasn't, dude, I thought that was a really, really cool layer. But it was way too long. It was masturbatory in its length because this was literally Shawn and Triple H saying, we're going to show you how to do a 45-minute masterpiece, and it didn't need to be. Yeah. If we condense that down, if you shaved off 12 minutes, this is the match of the 2000s, maybe.
Yeah.
Like 2000 to 2009. This is that good, but it's too long.
I agree.
And so I'd have gave it 4. And here's what's cool. I read Dave, and he's on par with us. So he says, and I thought this was interesting because it sounded like it, but this is what he said. The dead crowd combined with going so long hurt the match 3 3/4. And I'm not mad at him for that one. No. This isn't one where I say should have been more because they went too long, dude. They really did.
I noticed that the crowd was dead at one point. Like when they were on the outside, and all you could hear was just the guys in the front row yelling, Shawn sucks, like you suck, Shawn, and just yelling for Triple H. That's all you could hear. You couldn't hear anybody else. I was like, okay, well, the crowd's dead.
Yep. And to elaborate a little bit more from the issue that week, Dave said the main problem is that watching the pay-per-view, the live crowd seemed dead. When watching a main event that went 47 minutes and 23 seconds in the Hell in a Cell match with ShawnMichaels versus Triple H, which was likely the longest pay-per-view match in history that didn't involve a Royal Rumble or a World Championship, the lack of crowd heat was deadly. However, watching it with the great selling during the match and with both wrestlers playing near death at the finish, I thought the same match would have played like a classic in another venue. And I think he nailed it, dude. I do. You put that match in Lyon, France. You put that match in Puerto Rico. You know what I'm saying? But it is what it is, man. This is indicative, and it's not the crowd's fault here because they ain't getting ratings either.
Yeah, it's such
sign of the times.
Sign of the times. Like they were pushing the limits of time with the time limit here, and they went way too long. I totally agree. If they just cut it 12 minutes, you have a legitimate masterpiece with these two. I don't know if it could have ever lived up to the SummerSlam 02 match, but this one is, if you can take out the crowd, it's on par with that. But that crowd was so electric in 02 that they could never live up to it again. That concludes the Bad Blood 2004 review. So we thank you for joining and listening today. We have King of the Ring 1999 next week. And the following week, we are coming back with more 2004 with Great American Bash 2004. We thank you for listening. We lost Mongoose at the end, so we don't have him to give us here on the outro, but we will see you next week for King of the Ring 1999 on the Podski.